Hello, I'm Richard Seltzer. I'd like to share with you a story of mine that I hope will become the first chapter of a novel. The Fifth Floor. Fred took the stairs, as he had every day since the pandemic started, considering their elevator risky as a small closed space with no ventilation. He imagined Sylvester Stallone in training, racing up the stairs to the Philadelphia Art Museum in Rocky. No way he could do anything like that. He focused on one step at a time, avoiding touching the railing, which might have traces of the virus. Second floor landing, third floor landing, then finally, breathing heavily, he reached the fourth. But no sign on the door. But the sign on the door said fifth floor. The fourth was his floor, and it was the top floor. There was no fifth floor. There never had been. There never would be. He lived alone in 406, a one-bedroom apartment. He had lived there for 3 years, ever since his wife Linda died, and he sold their house, downsized, and moved to this apartment building. He used to have 12,000 books. Now he only had 3,000, all the books that he could fit in what for any other resident would be the living room. He read and wrote and did little else. The reading connected him to the past. The writing connected him, he hoped, to the future. What more did anyone need? Absorbed in thinking about his next novel, the disappearance of the floor he lived on struck him as a minor annoyance rather than a rip in the fabric of reality. Like his other recent novels, the new one would involve magical elements, with souls able to move to different bodies and different places and times. After 3 years, he was still dealing with the shock of Linda's death and the shock of death itself. He imagined that the soul might be separate from the body and might sometimes move from one body to another. People glibly use the word soul without defining it, as physicists glibly talked about dark matter and dark energy without having a clue what the words meant, only knowing that something was missing, something very important for understanding the universe. Fred sensed there might be some truth in his wild speculations about soul transference. He hadn't developed his theory well enough to perform experiments and write scientific articles or books, but he could use it in his fiction. His notion was to his rational mind like a glimmering light sensed on the periphery of vision, a hint of the presence of a pixie or fairy, which vanished as soon as he tried to focus on it. He had had such a moment of almost revelation when he reached the top floor. That distracted him from dealing rationally with the shock of there being a fifth floor in a building with only 4 floors. Without thinking, he went back down the stairs. He needed the 4th floor. This was the 5th floor, so he must have walked right past it. The 4th must be down 1 flight of stairs. But no, that floor was the 3rd floor. He kept walking. The next was the 2nd. After that, the 1st. Everything made sense except his own floor, which didn't exist. He turned around and went back up again. 2, 3, and then the next floor up was the 5th. There was no 4th, but he lived on the 4th. There never was a 5th. Why the hell was there a 5th floor today? That was impossible, and the impossible never happened. Maybe somebody had changed the sign. Maybe the janitor put the wrong sign up by mistake, or maybe someone had done it as a joke. It had to be a joke. He laughed at himself for treating the matter so seriously. He'd fallen for a childish prank. He opened the door and walked down the corridor. His apartment was the 2nd on the left, 406. That door was now labeled 506, an extension of the same prank, of course. He took out his key, inserted it in the slot with the door handle, and turned. It worked. The door opened. Mystery solved. All was right with the world. That's when he was greeted by a Dalmatian puppy, jumping with glee to see him and licking his hand. He didn't have a Dalmatian puppy. He didn't have any pet at all. He had had one as a child. Pebbles, he had named him. Pebbles was his best friend until he was hit by a delivery truck. Fred was 7 at the time. That was his first encounter with death and the absence that follows. How could this puppy have gotten into his apartment? And this was definitely his apartment. Regardless of the number on the door, the key worked, and from where he was standing, Fred could see the shelves with his 3,000 books, carefully organized so he could find what he wanted whenever he wanted. No one else in this building, probably no one else in this town, would fill the living room with books. Then he heard a voice, a familiar voice from the bedroom. "Fred, is that you?" "Of course, it couldn't be anyone but you. But you gave me a scare because I didn't expect you back just now. I didn't know when to expect you. You left your cell phone beside the bed, so I had no way to contact you, no way to know where you were or what you were up to. Where have you been? I was worried. That was a damned long walk you took. Dinner was ready an hour ago. I waited for you. Please promise me you won't do that again." "Linda?" he replied. If you enjoyed this story, I'd welcome your feedback. I'm tempted to make this the first chapter of a novel, and your comments will help me decide about that and may affect the direction the narrative goes. My name again is Richard Seltzer, as in Alka-Seltzer. My email is seltzerbooks.com. All Things That Matter Press recently published 3 other novels of mine: Parallel Lives, Beyond the Fourth Door, and Nevermind. You can find those all at Amazon as paperbacks and as ebooks. They can be read in any order. They're independent stories with overlapping theme and styles. Each presents a different view of reality, a different way of trying to make sense of the mysteries of life.